Hey, it's Kyle here, and I decided to do a type of video that I've done a couple times in the past on this channel, which is feature all the books I have by a specific author. I've done this before with Ken Follett and Harry Turtledove, which are two of my favorite authors. I'll put a link to both those videos in the description box below, so if you're interested in checking those out, please do. So I thought this time I'd focus on another one of my favorite authors, Ray Bradbury. So here's all the books I have of Ray Bradbury. First up is A Sound of Thunder. Really enjoyed this book. There's an awful movie version of it. It's one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. So if you ever see that A Sound of Thunder's on, don't watch it unless you like watching movies that are so bad that they're somewhat funny. That's what The Sound of Thunder is like. But basically, the basic plot of A Sound of Thunder is it's set in a future world where time travel is actually a thing. And it's actually such a normal part of society. Rich people will use it to take vacations, and what this book specifically covers is they go back to the era of dinosaurs and they kind of do like safaris with dinosaurs, but there's strict rules to make sure they don't impact any of the living organisms in that world, because they realize if they change anything remotely, it'll have a drastic impact on the future. Which right from the beginning, you know, that something's going to happen. Well, sure enough, in one of the things, a very small, one little tiny thing happens that I won't really spoil the plot of it. You'll see it once it happens. But when they get back to the future, the world they find is dramatically different than the world they left. Very interesting book. I really enjoyed it. I think it often gets overlooked compared to some of his better known novels, but I really enjoyed it a lot. Like, again, the movie is absolutely junk. Next up is Dandelion Wine, which in my opinion might be his most underrated book. It's a great book and it gets a lot of attention, but I think people really don't acknowledge how great the book truly is. Dandelion Wine doesn't have any of the supernatural elements that a lot of Bradbury's books do, and it's not science fiction. It's simply set in a small Midwestern town, and the main character is a young boy, and it's basically a summer in his life and how the world's viewed through this boy. And it's a very magical world, even though there's no supernatural elements. I mean, just think back when you were a little kid. The world just seemed to be a magical place, and you got to see how everything changed, your relations with your friends, your family, all that stuff. The characters are amazing in this book. The world that Bradbury paints is so beautiful. He does it in such details that you almost wish, like, I wish I could have been a little kid in that little town. Love this book. It's definitely one of my favorite Ray Bradbury books. Dandelion Wine, and it's also one of my favorite titles. I love that title, Dandelion Wine. Next up is my favorite Bradbury book of all time, Fahrenheit 451. It's one of my favorite books of all time. Usually if I do a top 5 list of my favorite fiction, this usually makes that list always. The vast majority of people have read this book at some point, usually in high school, because it's the go-to book when they want to teach you about censorship and the danger of censorship. But not only does it have an important message, the storyline's great. This is the book I really would love to see a great director make a great modern version of this book. I know there's been movies made in the past. I've watched one of them, I believe, was made in the 70s, but the special effects were so bad. I didn't really like the acting. And several times it's rumored that it's going to happen. Like Mel Gibson was rumored to be attached to do Fahrenheit 51 for a while. I'd love a really great director. Somebody like Christopher Nolan. Could you imagine a Christopher Nolan version of Fahrenheit 451? It would be mind-blowingly awesome. So I'm hoping to see a great movie version of this book sometime in the future. From the Dust Returned is kind of a... This is one of these books, it's okay. I wasn't too super excited about it. It's a good book. I don't think it's a really great book. It has a lot of supernatural elements to it, magical elements to it. But for Bradbury's books, I don't think it really stands out. So if you've read a lot of his books and you're just looking for a new Bradbury book to read, I would say go for this one, because it's not bad, but I don't really think it's great. If you haven't read much Bradbury, don't start out with this book. Start out with one of his better ones. But it's a decent book, but nothing special. Nothing to me really stands out after I read it. Sorry. Something Wicked This Way Comes. It's probably my second favorite Bradbury book. such an unbelievable storyline. It kind of has some elements of Dandelion Wine, what it's about these kids growing up in this small town. But this one, a supernatural element is introduced, and boy, is it a supernatural element. And it's interesting to see how the supernatural element interacts with the regular world and really shakes this town to its foundation, and how it impacts the relationship between some young friends, the main character and his dad, the interaction they have there, how the supernatural element really helps define their relationship. It's a beautiful novel. The storyline's great, and on certain times, I actually even like this one almost better than Fahrenheit 421. And I know I said I love the title of Dandelion Wine. Something Wicked This Way Comes is an awesome title for a book. This is another one I would love to see up-to-date movie version of it. Once you read the book, though, you'll probably have the same concern I am. There's a certain plot element in the book that I'm not sure special effects-wise how you would make it work without it looking just cheesy and corny. I don't know how he'd pull it off to make it look realistic. But if you've never read Ray Bradbury, I think this would be a great book to start with. Something Wicked This Way Comes. The Illustrated Men. This is a collection of short stories. Bradbury is the absolute master of short stories. The basic idea is this traveler meets an illustrated man on the side of the road, kind of hitchhiking. And an illustrated man is somebody that's basically covered their entire body with tattoos. But his tattoos have a mystical, supernatural element, and that they change. And the short stories are in this book are actually shown on tattoos on the illustrated man. There's some great short stories in this. I always love a great short story. Sometimes we get a collection of them like that in some books. It really doesn't feel like they fit together, but the device with the illustrated man kind of helps tie all the stories together. There are some beautiful, amazing stories in them. So The Illustrated Man is definitely a book by Ray Bradbury you'll want to read. Very much in the same category as The Martian Chronicles. This one is another collection of short stories, but in this one, as the title might suggest, all the stories are set on Mars. Bradbury is a master science fiction, and he explores several different elements of colonizing and exploring another planet through the Martian Chronicles. So if you love sci-fi, this is a great book to read. Each of the short stories take a different viewpoint of it and explore different issues and items that would come up when humans might explore a different world. And sometimes Mars is just the setting, and really the story could be taking place on Earth, but he just kind of uses Mars to better exemplify the point he's trying to make. Great short stories in this one, really love it. I think I enjoyed The Illustrated Man a little bit better than The Martian Chronicles, which for a lot of people that might be surprising because The Martian Chronicles is probably a little bit better known. There's some great stories in this one, but I think overall The Illustrated Man has a stronger entire collection of stories, where The Martian Chronicles might have a few that are better than The Illustrated Man. There's a few short stories in those The Martian Chronicles that I think are not, they drag a little bit, a couple of them, and they kind of, it's still a great book. Okay, this one's great, I just think The Illustrated Man is just a little bit greater. So another great collection of short stories from Bradbury, The Martian Chronicles. So those are the books of Ray Bradbury that I have. What's your favorite Ray Bradbury book? Let me know in the comment section below. Is there any Bradbury books that you've read that you've loved that I did not mention in this video? If so, let me know, and if I haven't read it, I'll be sure to check it out. I also remember I'm a part of two great collab channels, Project Nerdy and We Read Books. Project Nerdy talks about all sorts of nerdy stuff. We Read Books is a book review channel. Strongly encourage you to subscribe to both of those. So I'll put the links to those in the description box below, and maybe I'll put a link somewhere over here where you can click and just go right there and subscribe to Project Nerdy and We Read Books. Please subscribe to those channels and subscribe to this channel. I appreciate the support on all three channels, but especially Project Nerdy and We Read Books. Trying to grow those two channels at the moment, so I appreciate if you subscribe, like, and comment on videos on those channels. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any types of videos you'd like me to do in the future, just let me know in the comment section below. And if I like the idea, I very well might do it. So hope you enjoyed my exploration of the books of Ray Bradbury, and I'll see you the next time.